All right, guys, and we are back. I hope you guys are all full, your thirst is quenched, and you're ready for our last two speakers of the night. So our next speaker is one of our very own JMU students. She's expecting to graduate this May, and she's currently studying communications with a concentration in advocacy. Tonight, she'll be presenting her talk called 24%. Everyone, welcome Lexi Ali.
Hi everyone, my name is Lexi Ali, and when I was 8 years old, my mom signed me up to play soccer. I really wanted to dance. All of my best girlfriends were signed up for dance lessons. But hindsight 2020, the woman knew me better than myself because I have no rhythm, absolutely none. Ask my friends. So on my very first day of soccer, I walked onto the soccer field, and a boy had come up to me because in my neighborhood in Marine Park, Brooklyn, we have co-ed teams. And he was like, why are girls even allowed to play soccer? They shouldn't be here. And my ever so sassy 8-year-old self looked at my mom and looked at the boy and said, well, if girls aren't allowed to play soccer, what are you doing here? And that was the very first time that I was made to feel bad for being a girl. I grew up the youngest of 3 girls, and I didn't grow up with the traditional mom, dad, parent roles. My mom is a retired New York City police officer, so she worked a lot of nights. So it was often my dad who was the one braiding my hair and tucking me into bed. And because I grew up in a house dominated by women, my parents never made me feel less for being a girl. They never took away any of the opportunities that I had had, and they never loved me any less for being a girl. But when I was 10 years old, I came home one day hysterically crying because I had a crush on the cutest boy in class, but he told my best friend that I was way too bossy for him. Talk about heartbreak. When I was 14 years old, I had a family member tell me that women will never make good lawyers. I wanted to be a lawyer. When I was 16 years old, I joined my high school's mock trial team. And for all of you who aren't familiar, mock trial is essentially like a simulated court case where you act out different roles, and I played the part of the lawyer. During my closing statement, the judge cut me off and he said, "Can you be a little less assertive? It's kind of distracting, and you should smile a little bit more." When I was 18, I was told that I'm too passionate about certain issues, so I'll never make it in the courtroom. No one would take me seriously. When I was 20, here at JMU, I became the Panhellenic president. And for all of you who aren't aware of what Panhell is, we're the governing body of all sororities here at JMU. And it was the first time I finally felt empowered as not only a woman, but as a leader, because I surrounded myself with women who too wanted to be empowered. But in September of 2018, when I was 5 months past 21, I was diagnosed with depression. And I was terrified, because I thought that if people found out, then they wouldn't take me seriously anymore. That they would question every kind of decision that I had made, because I would either overthink it and sometimes couldn't even get out of bed. So I kept it a secret until the very end of my presidency, because I was so scared of what people would think. Now, I am 5 days away from 22, and I can't count how many times people have asked me, how are you possibly going to juggle your career and have a family? Well, 1, let me graduate first, and 2, I can't even get a boy to buy me a donut, so let's slow our roll right now. So what do all of these things have in common? And the fact is that each of my experiences parallel what it's like for a woman to obtain a political role in our government. Pew reports that right now, in our government, we have 25 female senators and 103 female House of Representatives. Now, 47% of women say that they do not want to hold office because the standards are way too high for them. Math, not my strong suit. So that leaves 75 male senators and 332 congressmen. Currently in the United States, our population is close to about 380 million, so we only have about 128 women making the decisions for close to 140 million women. The math does not add up to me over right there. And that's because we do not have a system put in place that requires a certain amount of women to hold public office. The problem is not necessarily women winning, because they could win. They can win local elections to federal elections. 30% women hold state Senate positions. The problem is getting them to run because they don't feel as if they'll be held to the same standards as a man. Currently, countries like the UK and Germany all have women leaders. Leaders like Margaret Thatcher paved the way for the United Kingdom to have a female in power. Theresa May is her name. Germany, Angela Merkel, paved the way for Germany to enter refugees into the country. So why not us? Currently, Rwanda has the highest amount of females in their legislative body. 30%, huge, I know, right? And that's because there's a gender quota. And for all of you who might not be aware of what a gender quota is, it is a mandatory percentage of women to hold office so that women feel as if they're on an equal playing field. Countries like Italy, who have the highest levels of sexism in the world, have an implemented gender quota so that women feel as if they have the same voice as men do. I mean, I'm talking like so serious that like only pretty women are considered up for roles in the government. So today I want to talk to you all, have a nice little conversation about the barriers that women face getting to hold office. These barriers look like anything from the ambition gap, likability, monetary restrictions, gender stereotypes, and of course, mental health. Shirley Chisholm once said, if there isn't a seat at the table, then pull up a folding chair. So let's pull up a folding chair. To be ambitious, you have to be assertive. Ambition is defined by Merriam-Webster as a goal, a drive, a dedication. But too often, ambition has become synonymous for women as bossy, tyrannical, overbearing. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I grew up, ambition was not on the list of bad words I wasn't allowed to say. But now it is. For men, being ambitious is a compliment, but for women, it's a criticism. Ambitious women are threatening, and we are bossy, but that's because we have to be seen on the same playing field as any man. Interesting, right? Synonymously in society, ambition is defined as just pejorative. No one wants to be called ambitious at all. So, American University School of Public Policy did a study, and they tested about 2,100 men and women ages from 18 to 25. And what they found was that ambition is socialized at a young age. They found that women are less likely to want to hold office, run for office, or even consider being a part of office, even if they have the same qualifications as any men. Now, there's a few factors that go into what this ambition gap could be. One being that women are much less likely to be socialized by their parents to accept politics as an appropriate career choice. The second being that men are more likely to be introduced to political information than women. And when women are introduced to this political information, it's on what we deem women's issues, which issues of education, healthcare, reproductive rights, whereas men are more likely to be introduced to issues that are typical masculine issues. So we're talking foreign policy, economic concerns. The third being that men are more likely to engage in competitive sports and care about winning. The fourth being that women are much less likely to consider themselves qualified, even when they are. Moving forward, in 2016, Barack Obama was campaigning for Hillary Clinton, and he wanted to appeal to the middle way, so those who weren't necessarily sure which way they wanted to lean. And it was mostly male undecided voters. And what he found was that they didn't really like Hillary Clinton for herself, not her politics. And that's because Hillary Clinton was not your typical socialized woman. When we're young, we're taught to be nice, we're taught to be friendly, taught to smile at everyone, be nurturing and empathetic. But that wasn't what Hillary Clinton wanted her stance to be. She didn't want to be portrayed as your woman candidate. She just wanted to be seen as a candidate, especially going up against the hyper-masculinity that was Donald Trump. So this introduces us to this concept called a double bind, a characteristic a woman is supposed to have, but simultaneously holds her back. In 2014, two researchers by the name of Rebecca Cornelia and Dorian Murmer did a study on Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2008. And what they found was, in a pivotal loss for her was the state of Iowa, she lost it to Obama, and in an interview, she started crying. 21 news reports frame this as not sincere emotion, but rather a pure strategy. Fox News, even titled the event as "The Ice Queen is Melting." There's a real person inside. So the double bind we see here is that femininity equals incompetence. For Hillary Clinton, as a woman, she's supposed to be emotional. We are emotional beings. Yet when she exhibited this emotion, she was immediately put down and criticized for it. It worked against her. It did not work in her favor at all. And that is because how can a woman possibly run our government if she cries in an interview? It's just absolutely ridiculous, right? So this reinforces a preconceived notion that women aren't meant to be politicians, because politicians are supposed to be dominant and masculine, and they're not supposed to show emotion at all. Women also don't want to run for office because they don't like the way women in office are currently treated. An example of this is Senator Kamala Harris. She is a Democratic senator from the state of California, and she was serving on a Senate Intelligence Committee who was investigating a lot of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. And she was supposed to ask questions. She was supposed to be engaged, but she was put down by 3 of her male counterparts because they found her to be too aggressive of a questioner. Can you imagine a man putting down another man for being too aggressive? So the double bind we see here is that women are encouraged to speak up, to use their voices, but then to feel invisible for doing so. What this tells us is that gender stereotypes are only okay when they're enforced rather than they're broken. Judith Butler, she was a researcher, she created something called the gender performance theory. And within this theory, it talks about how gender is a societal construction. So what that means is that masculinity and femininity are culturally created. So women in particular can choose when and where they want to act more feminine. A really great example of this is Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was dubbed in 2008, she was Senator McCain's running mate, as the pit bull in lipstick. She was the opposite spectrum of Hillary Clinton as you can get. She wore skirts, she did her hair, wore tons of makeup, but when it came to questions about masculine issues such as the economy, such as gun control, she became very masculine in order to remove herself from the feminine perception that women politicians are often given. So again, this tells us that women aren't meant to be politicians because they aren't always dominant, they aren't always masculine, and how could they possibly run a country? And we talked about ambition, we talked about likability, but now it's what everyone cares about, money. Katie Ziegler-Fisher wrote something called The Glass Dome. And it's a take on the glass ceiling, but the dome is meant to talk about the Capitol building. And what she said is a major reason why women do not want to run for office is because they do not have the fundraising for it. They don't have the financial support. I'm currently enrolled in a Women in Politics class this semester, and my professor, Dr. Wiley, told us that women aren't willing to take bread off their own table if they feel as if they're not going to be supported for it. So what that means is that women aren't willingly choosing to put their families first. They're choosing to be practical, because why run if they don't feel as if they're worth the investment? 60% of congressional candidates reported increments of donations of less than $25. The average male candidate received a donation of $100. This tells us that we aren't simply worth the money. And lastly, mental health. Mental health is becoming more important nowadays, which is just, it's awesome. And it's great to see. Anxiety is the most common illness in the United States, with 1 in 4 women having it, with depression following suit. That means about 55 million women suffer from either anxiety or depression. 24% of our female legislators, that's how many we have, 128. That means at least 32 of them suffer from some sort of mental illness, but they will not talk about it. Because in the political world, mental illness is political kryptonite. It's incurable. Men and women running for any type of office do not talk about it at all, because they would rather face the symptoms in silence than talk about them out loud. And that's because the job of a leader is to remain poised in all situations. So if a person is trying to run a country and suffers from some sort of anxiety or depression, they'll see it as a weakness holding them back. Again, I say political kryptonite because they find it so career damaging. When doing research for this presentation, the only person I could find any sort of mental illness stories about was Abraham Lincoln, who was really open about his depression. But again, a man being open about his mental illness because it won't be held against him. But for a woman, it'll just act as another barrier. We're already too emotional as it is, right, ladies? So, do women even make a difference? The answer is yes, we actually do. Women are more likely to empathize, support, and prioritize bills pertaining to issues that sometimes get put on the back burner. Education, welfare, social services, issues that are important for us to talk about, but sometimes do not. 41% of women say they are willing to run, but America is just simply not ready for a woman in government. With that being said, I hope that one day, 24% can turn into 50%. Dr. Wiley said something really thought-provoking in class the other day. She said, women are trying to get themselves included in a system that systematically tries to exclude them. So it's time to bend the system, to break the system, to use these barriers as hurdles to jump over. And I hope that one day you get to see me a part of the hopeful 50% that we'll see of women in office. Thank you so much.